And hello, everyone. Welcome to our pre-show of today's 2/20/12/02, our Core 2 A+ study group. We are just getting things started. We're about 10 minutes before, I guess 9.5 minutes before we get started. I am just getting things going here, trying to make sure that I have everything in order. I think I do. I think we're in good shape. Is this working? I need to make sure all the cameras are working. That's a priority. Make sure the audio is working. I think it is. I see things going up and down, and that's how I'm technically able to tell the audio is working. It's very, very difficult. You have to go through a lot of training to figure that out. So I think I did. Let's go over to, streaming is good. It says, excellent. Excellent. All right, so that's working. Hey, chat room. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. All Core 2 today. Doing A+, getting the second half of the A+ done. Didn't we just do one of these 2 days ago? We sure did. Thus is a good example of the world that I live in. The chaos that follows me around. It's not really chaos. It's all organized. It's all on a schedule. It's all on the calendar. But the calendar seems like it's in a lot of chaos. Maybe that's what it is. Oh, it's been a great month. There's been a lot going on, and I'm very glad we were able to get these in before the American Thanksgiving holiday hits. We did A+ on Monday, 2 days ago. We do the second A+ Core 2 today. Friday, a very rare Friday live stream is Network Plus, so I at least give my voice a day. And then on Monday, Tuesday, one of those, we're doing Security Plus. I'm right on top of my schedule, as you can tell. I'm right there. We're working to make it happen. I'm just trying to get through the week. I haven't even looked at my schedule for next week. I don't even think I've actually written the questions for Security Plus yet. I started them. They're not quite done yet. So we are so good. Is it okay to view this stream? Well, first, that in itself is a question that I'm sure is up for debate in the chat room, on the internet, and quite honestly, in my own house. I am just starting to study CompTIA Plus Core 1. There's nothing wrong with hanging out on the Core 2 live stream. You might actually learn something that might apply back to that. And if nothing else, you will be getting to this content eventually. And I think this is kind of a fun way to do it too. And if you have questions about any of this, there's the Q&A link right there. You can submit a question. So much in there. Is there no announcement in Discord when you're live? There is. It's 5 minutes before. So you got another minute and a half before it shows up in Discord. But it puts a little thing on Discord if you are in your Discord client and you have liked the event, it will tell you. There's also an email list that you can get on so you can receive an email 5 minutes before. And there's a calendar link, a Google Calendar link that you can put into your own calendar so that you'll know where it is in there. So I tried to get multiple things because people like to be informed in different ways. I've put together at least what I think keeps most people informed of this. But you could always put it on a calendar, on your own calendar, and then I have to put things on a calendar, especially when somebody sends me a calendar invite. I immediately add a notification, a 5 to 10 minute notification, or I'll just miss it. I'll be heads down working. I'm in a zone. I am creating content, and I look up, and an hour ago I was supposed to be on a call. That's my life. That's what I do. So what I do now is I give myself enough warning so that I am not wasting other people's time, which is a big problem for me. I hate wasting my time. I really hate wasting other people's time. And so I'm very ridiculous in the number of things I put in place, but occasionally it just slips through. Occasionally I mess it up, and there we go. Nobody's perfect. We'll figure it out. We'll make it happen. Thanks for being here, everybody. If you'd like to put your digital pin in our digital pin cushion, I guess is what it is. It's a map of the world, a very stylized map of the world. It should look somewhat familiar. And if you know where you are, you can always go to the link on your screen. Or if you don't know where you are, maybe this would be a good time to figure that out. And you can put your own pin in where you happen to be. Because you can see right now, looks like North America is definitely checking in. Not only the East Coast, middle of the country, the Midwest, the eastern side of the Midwest, somewhere in there. I'm really not sure where the line is. Is it the Mississippi? Is it further? It's difficult. I'm in Florida, so we just don't know. Which, by the way, not really stylized well. If we were to look at Florida's not, I think we're missing Naples all the way from Tampa down to Miami is just missing. So if you are in Tampa or Miami, I'm really sorry. Sometimes the stylized thing that we have here doesn't quite work out the way one would expect. Okay, this is the pre-show. We're doing really well. We're about 4 minutes. Oh, look, the alert went off on my screen that said, hey, there's a live stream. Thank you so much for letting me know. No, go away. There you go. And now we just need to wait. So we'll just sit here, wait here. So we're just waiting. Let's do a few checks first. We are looking at our monitors here. That looks good. Video input is good. We've got down here on the right side, you can see the Cylons going back and forth. Those are my video recorders. Okay, switching is working. Lower thirds are working. We're in good shape. We are in really, really, really good shape. Thanks for being here, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We got a lot to work through today. The live streams are always fun because there's always something interesting going on. We always have something unique that's happening, something that we do. So I always get a surprise in some way when I'm working through these. Usually it's about a question that I write and I think, well, everybody will get this one, and then nobody does. And then I write a question, I think nobody's going to get this one right, and then 100% of you do. So I've given up trying to predict. I do not know. So we'll figure it out. We'll find a way to meet in the middle and make that happen. Well, we got I think we can get rid of the web presenter setup. There we go. Oh, we got a lot there. We have lots to go through in the after show as well. While we're going through this, if you have a question you would like me to answer in the second hour, you can always put it in at the top of the screen at the URL that you see here. I don't have the little mark on my cursor. Let's do that. There we go. Did I? I did not. Where is it? There it is. It's working. So now when you see my cursor on the screen, it's got the little halo around it. Halo. There it is. A lot of you checking in. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being here wherever you are connecting from. Got lots there. I think if we are in the world of IT certifications, you are in a good place. This seems to be a very sweet spot right now as well. I think we're starting to see more companies sort of figure out what they want to do for the new year with projects. And that's always good for us because that's when we start to see people hiring more, is when the projects are coming on. Now, if you do have a question, now I've got my halo up. If you have a question, you can always submit it at any time during this first hour with the link that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. It's a good way to get there. We got about a minute or so to go, and we will get started with the live stream. No, it's not a live stream yet. I guess it sort of is a live stream. This is more of the pre-show. I always try to connect up about 10 minutes before. It never seems to be enough time, and sometimes it's just too much time. So it's always a gamble when I turn on the live stream. Are we ready? Are we not ready? Because there's a lot of things that happen prior to turning on the live stream, quite a bit. And now I'm not excellent anymore. I'm just good. I'm good. That's probably because the screen doesn't change very much on this particular view. So it doesn't use as much bandwidth as it thinks that I should, although I'm at 6 megabits per second. That's running pretty well. And my numbers for the cache are at 3%, which is exactly where it should be. So I think we're in good shape. I think we're ready to go. We'll take a sip. Me. And I think, look at that, 12 o'clock. Let's see if our keynote is working. And at least at launch, let's get a green light. Green light. Come on, you can do it. You can do it. There you go. We are playing. Green light is there. It did a thing. It's time for a live stream, everybody. Let's take off our lower third. Let's prep some more different things here. Let's get things going. Yeah, that's a good place to start. Let's start right there. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the November 2025 Professor Messer 220-1202. That is the A+ Core 2 study group. And I'm going to ask you questions today that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives for the 220-1202 Core 2 exam. If you're here joining us live, you'll be able to participate in real time. But if you're watching this in the replay, you can also join us and follow along as we try to go through all of these new questions that I've written specifically for this live event. Thank you so much for joining us. We have so much to go through today. I'm going to put up on the screen a couple of things. First, I want you to be aware that if you are here live, you can participate by opening up a new browser window and heading over, here it is, to this URL, professormesser.com/QA. That is the URL that will show you the information you need to be able to answer the questions. And once you are on that page, you just have to stay right there. You don't have to go anywhere. You stay exactly on that page, and you can answer all of the questions that we bring up today. If you find your way over to that page at professormesser.com/QA, there will be a question waiting for you. This is the only question you're going to get today that is a previous question that we did. We call this our rewind question because it is a question that we did in a previous study group. The question that I have for you today is this one. Which of the following backup types converts multiple saved backups to a single restore set? Now, if you think you know the answer, one of these answers I'm about to give you, our standing rule in the live stream is to only answer with the link that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Please don't put any answers into the chat room. Please don't put any hints into the chat room. Instead, we're going to answer the question, which of the following backup types converts multiple saved backups to a single restore set? Is it incremental, GFS, cloud, synthetic, or differential? Now, if you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in that question. We're going to come back to that question in just a moment. So let's see how you do with that one. Thank you so much for being here. We do one of these study groups for Core 1 every month. We do one of these study groups for Core 2 every month. We also do a Network Plus and a Security Plus live stream. So if you're interested in joining us for any of those, you can always check our calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. It's a common theme where you can find us on the internet. You simply type in professormesser.com to go to our website, or professormesser.com/ the name of the place you would like to find us. So professormesser.com/YouTube amazingly takes you over to YouTube onto our channel. Professormesser.com/Twitter or professormesser.com/X will take you over to that service. Professormesser.com/Instagram/LinkedIn/Facebook. You get the idea. Whatever that happens to be, you type it in and you can find us there. The most important part, of course, is that our entire course is available for you to watch for free. There's no registration. There's nothing hidden behind a paywall. Every minute of every training video is out there and available for you to watch at any time. You can find that on our website at professormesser.com or find us over on our YouTube channel, professormesser.com/YouTube. Also in this first hour, if I'm doing the right things, I will provide you with a series of keywords and instructions on how you can earn a continuing education unit credit. This is abbreviated as a CEU. Now, if you don't know what a CEU is, then you probably don't need one. This is commonly used for continuing education to give you a credit that you can apply towards a renewal or towards credit that you were actually here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. So listen in sometime during this first hour or so, and I will endeavor to provide you with those secret code words and instructions as we go along. Also, I'll let you know that we'll be talking today about the 220-1202 exam. That is the second half of the A+ series, the 220-1201 and the 220-1202. If you go to the CompTIA website, you will also see these versions of the exam also identified as V15, version 15. Why is it 1201 and 1202 and yet version 15? These are the questions of the universe that we will always ponder. We may never know the answer. This series of exams was released this year, March 25th, so relatively new in the world of A+ certifications. That means the estimated retirement for this exam will be September of 2028. So if you are working right now at the end of 2025 on your A+, or you're watching this in 2026, or you're watching this in 2027, you're watching the right videos. This is the right series. There won't be an update until later on in 2028. To get your A+ certification, to earn that cert, you need to pass 2 exams. The 220-1201, which these are graded on a scale from 100 to 900. You need to earn a 675 to pass your Core 1, and you need a 700 to pass your Core 2. So you need to do a little bit better on the Core 2 exam. That's why we're doing this live stream today. Once you become certified, your certification is good for 3 years. So if you weren't taking this exam until 2028 and you took it before that estimated retirement, you would still be certified for 3 years, which is kind of nice. You don't have to worry about it. But after that 3-year period, if you would like to continue to hold that A+ certification, you'll need to renew it. We can talk about renewal in the after show if you would like to. We have lots of materials and references that will talk to you about different ways to renew your certification. It's all on the Professor Messer website and the Professor Messer YouTube channel. Also want to talk about what we will be discussing today. The Core 2 exam focuses on operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, operational procedures, and potpourri. Really not much potpourri. Most of it are the 4 different categories. CompTIA refers to these as domains. So we will be talking about the operating system domain, the security domain, the software troubleshooting domain, and the operational procedures domain in our live stream today. There will be a replay of this live stream available immediately afterwards on YouTube. I also create an audio-only replay that I distribute in podcast form. If you would like to add that to your favorite podcast listening program, you can find it at professormesser.com/podcast. My podcasts are there for the A+ Core 1, A+ Core 2, Network Plus, and Security Plus certifications. And if you are on a streaming audio service, maybe you're on Spotify, you can always go to Spotify and search for Professor Messer. You will also find all of our live stream replays there as well in an audio format that you can listen to in the car. You can listen to when you're at the gym. You can listen to when you're walking around. It's a great way to keep up with the different topics and maybe test yourself as you're doing something else during the day. Also let you know that if you look at the YouTube video description of this video right now, there won't be any timestamps because there's a whole time thing we have to worry about. We have to first get through the live stream, and then somehow, like magic, within the next 24 hours, my marketing manager, Lori, who's going through this, hey, Lori, she is putting down all of the timestamps for the questions, the answers, and the other topics that we cover in this live stream. It's a great way to find what you're looking for. If you are someone who likes those timestamps or you just want to give a wave to Lori, be sure to tell her hello in the chat. I'm sure she's watching the chat and watching us probably at 2x speed as she goes through this replay and gets all of those different timing and timestamps down in the YouTube video description. When we are not here doing a live stream, we're over on our Discord. We'd love for you to join us. We have thousands of people there that are studying for their A+, their Network Plus, their Security Plus, and other certifications. You can find that at a URL that is not at all unexpected. It is professormesser.com/Discord. We also have an icon in the upper right-hand corner of our website. If you ever wanted to find it there, we have all of our social media links are there on the site as well. Eventually, you will need to take your A+ exam. And if you are in the US or Canada, you can go to professormesser.com/vouchers and get a discounted voucher. These are exactly the same vouchers you get from CompTIA, but because we are a CompTIA Platinum partner, one of the very few in the world, you can find a discounted voucher on our site. So same voucher, less money. Who doesn't want that? Not only do you get the voucher for less, you also get something that you can't get anywhere else, and that's a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. I put together a series of tips and tricks that can help you with your study process and a series of strategies you can use during your exam itself to be able to maybe get a few extra points as you're going through the exam. These are all documented in my Exam Hacks ebook, something you cannot purchase on its own. You can only get that Exam Hacks ebook with the purchase of a voucher or the purchase of one of our success bundles. Find out more about that at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's talk about the question I asked earlier. This is a question I asked last month. This is the only question you're getting today that you've seen before. The question asks, which of the following backup types converts multiple saved backups to a single restore set? Is it incremental, GFS, cloud, synthetic, or differential? All of these are backup. This question itself is about backup, and all of the answers are about backups, but which one of them would make the most sense? Let's stop our poll to see what you answered on this one. 52% of you, just over a majority, say the answer is synthetic. We have 19%, though, that said incremental, and 13% that said differential. 12% said cloud, only 4%, single digits, said GFS. Well, if you are taking a bunch of previously made backups and you're sort of squishing them together and turning them into one big single full backup, then you are working with something known as a synthetic backup. So you've created a full backup, but you didn't take a full backup. Maybe you took an incremental backup. Maybe you took a differential backup. Maybe you took some other type of backup. There are other types of backups that aren't covered on the A+, but occasionally you may want to have everything consolidated down into one single full backup. The way that we do that is through a series of software and implementations that allow us to take all of those previous backups, whether they were full or incremental or differential, take everything that is the newest and put it all into one single backup series. We refer to that as a synthetic backup. So even if you, for example, took a full backup, then you took maybe a couple incrementals, 3 incremental backups, and then at the end of that day on Thursday, you think, I really just need one backup series. I don't want to have to carry around a backup from Monday, a backup from Tuesday, a backup from Wednesday, and a backup from Thursday just to do a restore. Why don't we somehow programmatically stick all of these together, get rid of the old stuff, keep the new stuff, and create what is known as a synthetic full backup? So we effectively made a backup out of thin air. Not technically thin air, but we made it based on what other backups we had done previously to create that full backup. That saves us time. It saves us, in many cases, bandwidth. It saves a lot of complexity. It makes the restoration process much easier. There are a lot of good reasons for creating a synthetic backup. And indeed, a lot of you knew this, or perhaps you remembered from last month, because I noticed the number here much better than we did in last month's study group. It's 52% of you say synthetic. 52% of you got that one absolutely correct. There were other answers on here. Incremental backups do not give you a single restore set. They give you one full backup. In fact, we had a picture of an incremental one right here. We have a full backup, and then we have backups that were made incrementally through the different days. So that is not a full backup. That is not a single restore set. That was multiple restore sets that required you to then perform the restoration. So that would not be the right answer. We also have differential, another style of backup, but the similar problem, you have more than one restoration series, more than one restore set when you're ready to perform that restoration. So it would not be differential. We also have a cloud backup. Cloud backup is just sort of a generic term for storing the data in the cloud. But how do we store the data in the cloud? Did we store it as an incremental backup, a differential backup? Saying that we have a cloud backup does not describe anything about how the data was backed up. It doesn't say anything about how the data is to be restored, and it doesn't describe the number of backup sets. So that would not be the right answer either. And GFS is a style of backup that describes when you take a series of backups. This stands for grandfather, father, and son. And if you look at our video on backups, GFS is describing perhaps a grandfather backup is done once a month, a father backup is done 4 times a month, once a week, and then maybe a son backup is made every day. That's a good example of a GFS. And of course, you can have other examples of GFS as well, but that also does not describe the type of restore sets that are being used for this. In this particular case, the only answer that makes any sense, the only one that provides and takes multiple, say, backups and creates a single restore set from those backups is synthetic. Almost went the wrong way on that one. I got the wrong answer. 52% of you got it right. It is indeed a synthetic backup. So that is a great way, if you're someone who is working through the details of backing things up, that is something that might help you quite a bit as you're going through different strategies. Different organizations use different strategies for backups. They have different types of backups they perform. They put these backups in different locations. It is a science unto itself. And if you are in a role where you will be responsible for backups, you will become very, very, very familiar with this process. Let's, now that we've gone through our rewind question, let's shift gears a little bit. And let's talk about a question that is not multiple choice. The question we just did was a multiple choice question where there was a single question and there were multiple answers that you could have chosen from. If you didn't know anything about this technology and you were reading the question, you don't know what a backup type is, you don't know what a single restore set is, you don't know what any of these names are, you still had a 20% chance of getting it right because you could have guessed. Now, CompTIA will give you those points on the exam if you happen to guess correctly, because they don't know if you really knew it or if you guessed and got it right. Either way is good with me, of course. But CompTIA really wants to test you. They really want to see if you really know, if you have a really good idea of how this information, how this data, how this information is really working on your systems, how we would implement it into a large corporate environment. And so at the very beginning of your exam, you will get a handful of questions that are not multiple choice. That's right, not multiple choice. So what are they if they're not multiple choice? Well, they're anything but. That is the definition of a performance-based question from CompTIA. It is something that is not a multiple choice question. So a lot of people get concerned about this, but in reality, it could be a fill-in-the-blank question. They could put you to a command prompt and have you perform some functions. It might be a drag-and-drop question. They might put you at a Linux screen. They might put you at a Windows screen. There's lots of things you can do, but they are always going to be testing you on the information that is part of the official CompTIA exam objectives. So in my mind, if you know the objectives, you understand the operating systems, you know about the utilities, you understand the security side of it, you've been working with these technologies for a while, you know how to troubleshoot some of these technologies, then it really doesn't matter how they ask the question. You will know the answer. So don't worry so much about the format, worry about the content that could be asked of you for this particular format. So I have for you, as I do with every study group, the first new question of every study group is a performance-based question, and I have a performance-based question for you today. This question is from the Windows command line. You can see it listed there, and I have, really, there are two questions here. It's sort of 2.5 questions. We'll start with the first questions that say, a Windows user is complaining of connectivity issues to a server at example.com. Example.com, by the way, is a site specifically created for examples. I know it probably wasn't much of a reach to figure that one out, but it is a good one to use for something like this because everybody can access example.com, and it makes a very good reference if you're trying to create a question like this so people understand what you're looking for. So once we know that someone is having connectivity issues to example.com, I want you to answer these questions for me. The first one is, in Windows, determine the IP address of example.org. I don't know why I put org there. I think org is probably what I wanted to do, but either one works for me. The question doesn't change. Example.org based on DNS information. So determine the IP address of example.org based on DNS information. I think I do know why I put org in there right now. Either one works for me. And when you look at the results of that command that you just ran to get this information, I want to know how many IP addresses are shown. And I'm leading you a little bit with this one. I want you to tell me, why are there multiple addresses? So I'm giving away a little bit there. When I say how many IP addresses are shown, you know it's not one because I didn't say, why are there multiples? Well, how many showed up and what do they look like? That's our first question. I want you to tell me what command you used to determine the IP address of example.org or example.com based on DNS information. So do that first, and then tell me how many IP addresses are there and why there are multiples of this. The second half of this question is asking something else. It's asking what Windows command would provide a list of routes to example.org and measure round trip time and packet loss at each hop. One command to be able to do that. Not 2 or 3 or 4 commands. I need one command that allows me to do that. So if you think you know the answer, use the link on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA and tell me at a minimum what those 2 commands are. For a little bit of extra credit, you can put in that extra question I have here about how many IP addresses are shown and why there might be multiple addresses. To be fair, we aren't exactly sure the exact reason why, but we can create some ideas and speculation as to why there might be multiple IP addresses. And if you would like to also speculate on that, please add that to your answer. And then, of course, we can go through the details of this. If you think you know the answer, of course, always go to the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Let's see how good you are at the command line. We do a number of these command lines in our live streams because you could be asked about command line information on the exam. And with the Core 2 especially, there's a lot of command lines you need to know, not just for Windows, but also for Linux. And most of the ones in Linux would also apply towards Mac OS at the command line. So once you know all of those, you're almost ready for anything. You can work at the command line in Windows. You can work at the command line on a Linux device. You can work at the command line on a Mac OS device. A lot to work on for that particular piece. And if you look at the exam objectives, there are a lot of commands on the list, the official exam objectives, a lot of commands you need to know. We can look at that in the after show. And of course, if you have questions about any of these, or you have some other specific question about the exam itself, you can always submit a question for the after show by going to that same link, professormesser.com/QA. There's a little tab at the top. You can submit your question for the after show at any time. So I think the examples I did are examples that are showing example.com. I think I asked you to show me example.org, but we'll look at example.com as well. I think there's even one we can even do for example.org. Let me look real quick of example.org and see. Yeah, I think I know where I was going with that one. That makes a little more sense, but that's not what I showed in my example. So we'll look at it. So a number of you have locked in your answer. Let's step through each one of these to determine what we would use to be able to do this. So I'm going to start with our first question, which asks, a Windows user is complaining of connectivity issues to a server at example.com. In Windows, determine the IP address of example.org or example.com based on DNS information. What command would we use in Windows to do that? Well, if you were to use Windows, you're probably going to use NSLOOKUP. NSLOOKUP is a name server lookup command, and NSLOOKUP is designed to provide you with a way to query a DNS server, a domain name system server. The DNS servers most popularly are used to convert or translate between a fully qualified domain name and to resolve an IP address from that fully qualified domain name, the FQDN to IP, as we tend to call it. So if somebody says, what's the FQDN for that? They're asking for the fully qualified domain name. That would be the name of that site. So if you were to talk about www.professormesser.com, that is a fully qualified domain name. But www.professormesser.com doesn't tell you the IP address. We have to convert that somehow between the name that we know and an IP address that we don't know. Well, it's a DNS that does that for us. And this command effectively emulates that process for us. It queries a DNS server to say, if I'm looking for example.com, what IP address would I get if I was to look at example.com or example.org? And this one happens to be an NSLOOKUP that shows a number of different answers in here for that particular IP, for that particular fully qualified domain name. Notice that example.com gave me a lot of different answers. If you do example.org, I think you get about 4 different IP addresses. In fact, I could probably bring that up on my screen. I'm going to bring up a console screen that I have. We're just going to move it over here. I'll put this console screen right in front of everything. And I'm on Mac OS, so I don't have NSLOOKUP, but I do have dig, which is a similar command for Mac OS and for Linux. And by the way, there are versions of dig available for the Windows operating system as well. So if we do example.org, it's a similar series of results. Notice it shows me 4 different resolutions, 4 different answers. Example.org is giving me not just one IP address, it gave me 4 IP addresses: 23.215.0.133, 0.132, 75.238. Actually, it's on the 220 network, 23.220, 75.238, and 75.235. 4 different IP addresses. Now, why did it give me 4 different IP addresses? I just needed one IP address. We only need one IP address to connect to this. In fact, here's an interesting thing. Let's run this command again. I'm just going to do an up arrow. So dig.example.org. Look at the results on this one. I'm going to scroll up just a little bit. So here's the first 4 that we get that end with 133, 132, 238, 235. Look at the new answer is 235, 238, 133, 132. It's the same IP addresses, but notice that they are in a different order. That's interesting. Let's do it again. dig.example.com. Yet again, a completely different order that came out. That seems unusual, or does it? We often think that a single input into a computer will always give us the same output. That is something that's very common. If you ask a computer to calculate a bunch of ones and zeros, it gives you an answer in ones and zeros, and it's always the same answer every time. In this case, the answer was different every time, but it's because we wanted it to be different. We specifically defined and configured our DNS server so that if anybody asks for example.org, give them these 4 IP addresses, but every time put them in a different order, randomize them up just a little bit. Or as we do in the world of DNS, more of a round robin distribution. The reason we do that is most commonly your DNS resolution that's occurring on your local workstation is just going to grab the first IP address it gets. So if we look at the very first IP address, 23.215.0.133, that is the IP address for example.org. We put it into our cache and we ignore everything else. The next person that performs a query for example.org gets a different IP address as the one that is first. And then the next person that does a query to example.org gets a third one. So it's rotating through these. Why would it be doing that? Well, most commonly, we use this type of round robin distribution as a way to load balance between different servers. It's a very simple load balancing technique. It obviously is not perfect in the way that it distributes these IP addresses, but it does, generally speaking, especially across a large number of servers and a large number of clients, it will generally balance that load pretty well across all of those. So it doesn't mean that you are more secure. It doesn't mean that you're preventing any type of attack. It doesn't mean that you're filtering out anything. You're simply deciding what people are going to connect to what servers. In this case, there are 4 different IP addresses that it could connect to. So we could reasonably assume there are 4 different web servers or there could be 4 different load balancers and multiple servers. You can just keep extrapolating from this to create load balancer upon load balancer upon load balancer. But that's a very, very simple load balancing technology. So that's a good place where having a series of IP addresses defined and shown to you as you go through this works probably behind the scenes to do other things for us. Let's take another example of this. Since we're here, since we're chatting, I know I'm sort of spending a little bit more time than I normally do on a question like this, but now I'm intrigued. Let's take a different one and let's see how this works. Let's do a lookup, do an NS lookup or a dig to www.professormesser.com. What IP address do we get? And in this particular example, I get 2 IP addresses that are very different from each other. I get 104.20.22.204, and I got 172.66.174.118. Both of those IP addresses are IP addresses that are defined on Cloudflare. Cloudflare is a reverse proxy service that effectively puts Cloudflare in the middle between my web server and your workstation. And we do that for a number of different reasons. We can do it for load balancing. We can do it for security. We can do it for monitoring. We can do it to prevent attacks. There's lots of things we can use that reverse proxy for. Although, as many of you know, yesterday morning, that Cloudflare had a problem and Cloudflare went down for all of their Cloudflare customers. That was a little bit of a problem. And if you are in that situation where you are struggling through trying to figure out how is this going to work now if we have this connected to your system, I was going to look for the Cloudflare piece that I had here. Maybe I actually don't have it, but I have a screenshot that I took of my website. Here it is, of my website when I was dealing with this problem yesterday. You probably saw this because Cloudflare sits right in the middle. So I was on my browser and I was working, and here I am working. This is what I saw on my screen when I tried to connect to my website yesterday. And my host was working. Everything was fine on my website. In fact, Cloudflare was even nice enough to tell me, oh yeah, you're working fine. But we're not working fine. We have a problem right there. So those IP addresses that you're seeing on my NS lookup are for Cloudflare. So you first have to connect to Cloudflare, which then will connect you to me. Now, I could turn that off at any time. There's a way to bypass that. I can bypass the proxy and have you come directly to me. In reality, Cloudflare is providing me with a series of security and monitoring functions, and then I have a load balancer on this side. So Cloudflare connects to a single IP address on my side to be able to make that happen. Hopefully you did not run into something like that, but considering the number of people that are using Cloudflare and the number of systems that were affected yesterday, you were probably in some way affected by this, don't you think? I'll bet it was. So there's an example of why we might put different IP addresses into our DNS server. Some of it might be for directing to a proxy. Maybe some of these, in fact, we even looked at the two that we have here, the two that came up for ProfessorMesser.com. These are Cloudflare instances. So this is effectively for redundancy. So if the first IP address is not available, you have another IP address you can go to. And depending on where you are in the world, you will also get a different set of IP addresses here because Cloudflare will take you to the closest destination for Cloudflare for where you are. So that's a really good example of how DNS can be used in a lot of different ways. DNS is a very, very important service. It's a very, very sensitive service. You have to make sure if you're making changes to DNS that you know exactly what you are doing, because if you do the wrong thing, you could very easily block your website from being accessed by anyone for a very long period of time. So we don't want to have that happen. So don't just make changes to your DNS configuration sort of on the fly. You instead want to focus on knowing exactly what you're doing and have a way to back out of this. We often talk in our A+, our Network Plus, and our Security Plus certifications about having some type of change control. You should always have change control when it comes to DNS. There's a second question here that I asked. We aren't done yet. The next question on our list says, now that we know how many IP addresses showed up for example.org or example.com, now I want you to, and by the way, those are different services, so you will get different IP addresses for that. And now we sort of understand why we think there might be multiple addresses shown. Now we'd like to check our connectivity to that particular site by running a command that will provide a list of routes and measure round trip time and packet loss on each of those hops, on each of those routes that we have. And if you're going to do that, you would not use NSLOOKUP, you would instead use PathPing. PathPing, it's a Windows utility. This is not a utility available in Linux or Mac OS, at least not one that is commonly available. There are some that are similar on those operating systems. I use one called MTR, which is multi-traffic routing, something like that, multi-traffic something. And that is a great little utility that provides a similar function. This utility is actually two utilities in one. It's Path and it's Ping. That's the name, right? PathPing. PathPing, and in fact, in my case of PathPing, I didn't show any of the DNS parameters. It's not something you have to know for the exam, but I did a -n in the command line so that it would not perform any resolutions across all of those. So the first thing that it does when you perform a path ping to a site like example.com is it runs a trace route. So if you ran a trace route, that's pretty much what it looks like. Here's the first router, here's the second router, here's the third router, here's the fourth router. That's half of the question that I asked. If you recall, I asked what would provide a list of routes and measure round trip time and packet loss at each hop. Traceroute does not do that part. Traceroute does not provide an extensive round trip time measurement along with packet loss on the screen because it only does it really one time. I guess the default for Traceroute is it does it 3 times, but that's it. That's all it gives you. There's not much there to work with. So once PathPing has gone through this entire process of finding between your workstation and all of the devices in between, it begins, as it says here, computing statistics for 300 seconds. I've also blocked out a little bit of information here because you don't need to know it. Those IP addresses will take you right back to this workstation, so we're not going to do that. Computing statistics, so it's going to sit here for 5 minutes and just sit there. This is Windows at its best, right? It's just sitting there. The cursor's just blinking at you, but it is doing something. If you were to wait for 300 seconds and have it go through the screen, it will present to you this information. In fact, there's the line that I was just showing you. Computing statistics for 300 seconds, and then 5 minutes later, you have finally a list of all the hops. There they are. Round trip time to all of those hops. And I can give you statistics there that show how many packets were sent, how many were received, and how many were lost so that we can determine, are we losing packets between here and there? Now, in this particular example, it looks like they are filtering things down at example.com and example.org. So we won't be able to get a lot of good statistics when somebody puts a filter in place. But all the way down the line through the first 8 hops, we're doing pretty well. My hop 33 looked like it was the largest at 22 milliseconds on average, but that's still a very good response time. And then you can see other response times as it's going through. We can see that practically nothing was lost until we got to that filter down here. And again, it shows us the IP addresses that were defined as the next hops for all of those. So it's a way that you could have Windows perform an ongoing analysis of a link over more than just a 10-second period. Have it really go through every hop, examine round trip times at every hop, examine if it's losing any packets at every hop, then go to the next one and keep going through that list. So it's almost like, exactly as the name implies, we're taking the trace route function, that's your pathing, the ability to find those paths through the network, and then it is a ping and measures the statistics associated with that ping, thus the name path ping. There it is. What could be easier? So that is the command that would show you sort of an all-in-one, a number of routes along with response times, and it will tell you if you're losing any packets, which could indicate that a router is having problems somewhere down the line. We've had other study groups where I've shown this to you. I've had numerous problems with my ISP through the years, and I've shown you times where it went all the way through this list, but there was one router right in the middle that kept losing packets, and it was affecting my throughput, and it was on the provider's network. And as I've mentioned to you before, if you ever want to go through a lesson in futility and frustration, try calling your local ISP and explaining to them that you don't have a problem in your house, you don't have a problem with your router, you don't have a problem with your ONT, you don't even have a problem in your neighborhood, but you do have a problem with a router in Miami that's causing a problem for everybody in Orlando. They don't know what to do with that. They don't have a script for that one. They want to send someone out to your house. Well, let me get somebody in a truck to come over there. Let's schedule somebody to come to your house and fix this. I said, well, they can't fix this at my house. They need to go to Miami. So have them go to the Miami NOC. That would be great. The Miami NAP downtown, the network access point that's in Miami. That's where you need to fix this. Or wherever your point of presence is in Miami, go send him there. Somebody needs to fix that router. And they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. We don't have a button to push to make that fix. We don't have that. I had to go through a number of hops up the line to find somebody who can solve that problem. And it's information like this, PathPing, MTR, and other utilities that can help you find that information so that you know where the problems are occurring. So that was the answers we were looking for. We were looking for Our NS lookup command, if you're on Linux or Mac OS, maybe even dig would work. And we wanted to be able to see what command we could use to provide a path and a response time and lost packets. Path ping fits perfectly. So if you answered those two, you did a great job. That was your performance-based question. Your rather involved me talking performance-based question of the month. Let's jump now into a different kind of question. A multiple choice question. We're back to those. This multiple choice question asks, a technician would like to monitor storage drive read and write metrics on a database server over a 5-day period. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Would it be Event Viewer, Task Manager, Performance Monitor, Event Viewer, or Task Scheduler? Look, we have Event Viewer twice. Maybe you should answer twice. How did that happen? Where did that come from? That's me typing too much is what happened. So is it Event Viewer? If it's Event Viewer, it's really Event Viewer. Or it could be Task Manager, Performance Monitor, or Task Scheduler. It's a live stream, people. That's how it works. This will not be the last problem you see in a live stream. It's not the first problem you've ever seen either. So it's sort of we always have something go wrong at some point during the live stream. That's the one I'm counting for this one. Is Event Viewer and Event Viewer are the same thing. We won't see that one on a replay. We'll have to fix it. We'll fix it in post, which is to say we will not fix anything. We will leave it exactly the way it is because we make mistakes all the time. In this industry, especially, just hitting the wrong button can bring down an entire network. Or in the case of Cloudflare, they had a automatic sort of configuration file that got too big that caused all the problems yesterday. Of all the things, a configuration setting is what really messed up the entire system. So in the big scheme of things, I'll take a duplicate answer in here. At least I didn't crash Cloudflare yesterday. I know you kind of have to balance this out with how things are going. Speaking of balancing out, let's see how we did with this one. A technician would like to monitor storage drive read and write metrics on a database server over a 5-day period. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Would it be Event Viewer, Task Manager, Performance Monitor, Event Viewer again, or Task Scheduler? Now, I want to see how many people chose that Event Viewer over this Event Viewer. How many do you think it was? Let's find out, shall we? We're going to close the poll and see if anybody bid on either of those. We did. We had 9% that said this Event Viewer and 9% said that Event Viewer. That's perfect. You've made me so happy right now. It's hard for me to explain. 72% of those said it was Performance Monitor. Performance Monitor is the one you chose. 72%, such a big number. Of course, it's Performance Monitor. That is exactly the answer we were looking for. It would not be Event Viewer, which would only show us events that were occurring on your system. These would be usually exceptions that are added to the log file, but not always. But Event Viewer does not monitor or store storage drive read and write metrics. You need some other utility that is monitoring those things so that it can store that information. Task Manager doesn't do that either. Task Manager does show you a number of that information. You can get it right from Task Manager, but it's a real-time view. It shows you what happened the last 60 seconds, which is useful and valuable. But when you need a very long-term analysis of performance, Task Manager is not going to do that for you. We want to store that data. We want to walk away for 5 hours or 5 days in this case. We want to come back. We're going to start this on a Monday, and we want to come back on a Friday and see everything that happened with storage drive read and write performance over that entire period. Performance Monitor is the utility that will do that for you. This Event Viewer and this Event Viewer will not show you that. This Task Manager will not show you that. And Task Scheduler is designed to start or perform automated functions at a particular time and day. That is not what you would use to perform read and write metric storage. You wouldn't start it, take a sample, and then stop. You would have it start recording this and continue over the next 5 days. That's exactly what we would do. And Performance Monitor provides exactly that on your system. If you've not looked at Performance Monitor or used it, it is a fantastic utility. Has quite a few functions you might even know are in there. It can show you, of course, information on the hardware and the resources inside of your system. It can show you information about applications. It can break down information about how this is performing over a long period of time and store that into files that are on the storage system so that if you do restart this system, you still have that data that's available that you can reference through that time. And there's reports that are built into this. So there's not a lot of work that you have to do. If you want the report, you click the button. It brings up the report that shows that it was performing straight up, very high, and then suddenly down to nothing. You can start looking at the performance over a long period of time and understand exactly what's going on. That would be Performance Monitor. Everybody knew this. 72% of you knew this. 3/4 of you did. Would not be Event Viewer and would not be Event Viewer. We explained why Task Manager wouldn't work or Task Scheduler, but all of those came in at single digits anyway. You guys did great. The answer, in course, is Performance Monitor. Let's do another question. I'm going to try to get through these pretty quick since I talk so much for the performance-based question today. Not unusual for those of you that have been here before. The next question we have more of a security question that asks, an attacker is viewing and modifying network communication between two devices in real time. Which of the following best describes this attack type? Is this cross-site scripting, SQL injection, denial of service, brute force, or on path? It's got to be one of these. These are all security concerns, of course, but only one fits for this. The question again asks, an attacker is viewing and modifying network communication between two devices in real time. Which of the following best describes this attack type? Is it cross-site scripting, SQL injection, denial of service, brute force, or on path? If you think you know the answer, lock it in right there, professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, follow the link on your screen and go to professormesser.com/QA to see how well you might know this one. This might be a good one to step through. Obviously, security is an entire domain of the 2012-02 exam. There are a lot of information in there we need to know about security features, security options, security attack types. This is what you're running Windows. You need to know a lot about security. Bottom line. Generally speaking, any operating system these days, you need to know a lot about security. Very good example. Yesterday, in fact, when Cloudflare went down, there was a notice. They gave a notice that said, well, just before we went down, we saw a lot of activity all of a sudden, and then everything stopped working. And one of the things that they really ran into was there was a lot of speculation immediately that said, oh, there must have been a cybersecurity event. There must have been an attack against Cloudflare. There must have been, no, just a configuration file was broken. In fact, I told people at the time, hold on, this could be anything. Cloudflare gets attacked constantly. They are probably one of the most attacked sites on the internet. They're very good with their security. So it's unlikely or it would be inappropriate to immediately jump to a cybersecurity event when in fact it could be almost anything. And in this case, it was not security related. It was bad programming. Bad programming is how that worked out. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, an attacker is viewing and modifying network communication between two devices in real time. Which of the following best describes this attack type? Is it cross-site scripting, SQL injection, denial of service, brute force, or on path? We'll close our poll and see how we did with this one. Again, we got a very good number. 72% of you say on path. 12% of you say cross-site scripting. And then we have single digits for squirrel injection. 5% of you said denial of service. And then we have 3% that say brute force. So in this case, the 72% of you that said on path was such a large number. It has to be that one, right? It's exactly what was going on. This is a process that attackers will use to be able to not only monitor information between two devices in real time as it's happening, but could potentially change the data that is being sent along the line. You have to sit in the middle if that's the particular case, and that's an on-path network attack. You may have seen this written in other ways previously. Sometimes you'll see this referred to as a man-in-the-middle attack, which certainly functionally, physically describes what's going on. You have an attacker that is sitting in the middle of this connection and they are watching and or changing the data that is being sent between one side and the other. That means the person in the middle effectively has to become some type of forwarding device. They have to take it from one device and forward it to another. But then the question becomes, how did they get in the middle to begin with? If two stations are talking to each other, there's nobody in the middle. How did somebody manage to get their way into the middle of this configuration? And there's lots of ways to do that. One very common way on a single subnet is to do something called ARP poisoning, where you can tell devices, instead of sending the data where you think it should be going, send it to me, the attacker. It's exactly what we do. And I show you an example of that in our video. This is in section 2.5 of the 1202 exam series, that course. And you can see the video name is On Path Attacks. I take you through an animation that shows how an attacker could ever make that happen. And it's much easier than you might think. An on-path network attack is what you can choose for that, and that is what you chose. 72% of you chose that. It would not be cross-site scripting. Cross-site scripting is one where an attacker does somehow find a way to redirect a particular station to another device, but the attacker's not in the middle. And that was an important part of that, is that the attacker is viewing and modifying network communication in real time. Cross-site scripting is not doing that. The attacker may not even be there. This may be something the attacker has just set into motion and they went to sleep. They got off the internet. They're off doing something else. They do not have to be in the middle of the conversation to perform a cross-site scripting attack. SQL injection, a similar type of scenario where you can manage to get access to a database that you do not have direct permissions to view. That is usually very commonly associated with a bad programming. This bad programming seems to come up quite a bit. SQL injection, there should be methods within the code of the application and techniques used to filter out information that should not go into that application. And if you don't have those filters in place and you're not doing a good job at monitoring the input, then you could potentially have a SQL injection attack. Denial of service is one where the attack is simply brought down the systems. The attacker's not in the middle. There's not two devices communicating in real time. Very often it's a set of attackers that are simply overloading a service or finding a way to disable a service. That's a very common way to have denial of service. And then we have brute force. Brute force is commonly associated with trying to reverse engineer a password. Doesn't always have to mean that, but that's a common use of the term brute force, where we have a password hash, and we're trying every possible combination of letters, numbers, special characters to be able to somehow reverse engineer that particular password. We're just effectively trying every possible password to see if we can match that. That is not the type of scenario we were referring to here. If there's an attacker in the middle and they are viewing and or modifying data between two systems, that is very clearly an on-path attack. We've already talked about a lot of information on our live stream today, but I wanted to also remind you that if you're going through these videos, you'll notice on our A+ course, 137 videos, almost 19 hours of information to go through. There may be times when you might need to skip a video, or you just don't have time to spend the amount that you would like on a particular video. Don't worry, I've already got all of the notes from our videos available for you to look through. These notes are set up in a way that follows the same structure as the existing training course, and it provides you with a breakdown of all of the text, all of the important graphics, all of the important information from every single video. For example, here are some of the videos that we have here for 1.2, upgrading Windows. We've got 1.3, an overview of Windows. I've got some Windows information. Those tables from the video are right here. All of this information is incredibly useful to be able to reference after the fact without having to watch and go through all of the video content again. These course notes are available for both my Core 1 and Core 2 courses. This one happens to be the one for the Core 2. If you get the physical edition that I'm holding in my hand, it's a printed book, whereas the digital edition PDF is one that you could purchase and download and put onto all of your systems. Or you can get both of them. When you get the printed version, you get the digital version for free. So while you're waiting on this to be delivered, you can, of course, download and start using the digital form immediately. If you purchase this along with my practice exams, we have both of these here. The practice exams we'll talk about in a bit. These will also provide you with a way to get both of those, but at a little bit of a discount. So there are ways to bring down the cost just a little bit. If you'd like to know more about it, go to professormesser.com/1202 notes. You can find out all about our practice exams, our course notes, our success bundle, and so much more. Let's shift gears back to our questions that we have. The next question on our list, more of a troubleshooting question, and it asks, a user's computer is showing the message, your computer is low on memory. Which of the following should be the technician's first troubleshooting task? Would it be restart the computer, reinstall the applications, perform a Windows repair installation, view the event viewer logs, or check Task Manager? There's a lot of choices there. The question again asks, a user's computer is showing the message, your computer is low on memory. Which of the following should be the technician's first troubleshooting task? Would it be to restart the computer, reinstall the applications, perform a Windows repair installation, view the event viewer logs, or check Task Manager? Have to find out which one of those it might be. If you think you know the question, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, go to the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Lock in that answer. See if you happen to know what you think the best first choice would be. All of these would be good troubleshooting tasks potentially for this particular problem. But which one is the first? That's the first thing you should do. And there is an important consideration that you should keep in mind. I'm not saying anything else. Just make sure you lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in that answer. This is a very common problem to run into, so it's important to know where you would start when troubleshooting this particular issue. Let's see how you did. The question again asks, a user's computer is showing the message, your computer is low on memory. Which of the following should be the technician's first troubleshooting task? Would that be to restart the computer, reinstall the applications, perform a Windows repair install, view the event viewer logs, or check the Task Manager? Let's stop our poll and see what you think the answer is. There's a big number here, 80%, a very, very large number to check Task Manager. 80% of you say you should check Task Manager first. 16%, however, say you should view the event viewer logs. And then 2% apiece said to restart the computer. 2% said to perform a Windows repair installation. What do you mean 2%? How did we only get 2% for turn the computer off and back on again? Isn't that the default for everything? It is not. And that's why only 2% showed that. 0% said reinstall the apps. Could that solve the problem? It could, but that wasn't the question. The question was, what should be the first thing that you do? So 80% said to check Task Manager. Low memory warnings, as I mentioned, are very common. You will get a message on your screen that says something like this: your computer is low on memory. To restore enough memory for programs to work correctly, save your files and then close or restart all open programs. There's the answer, right? No. That's what people who don't know what they're doing would do to hopefully get through this problem. They would save their files, close or restart all open programs. But you're not all those people. You're someone much more knowledgeable in this issue, so you need to find out, why do we not have any RAM? Most people would not be able to do this because they're not trained in the nuances of the Windows operating system, but you are. And so one of the first things that would be very, very useful is to gather more information. Before you make any changes, before you stop any applications, before you save anything, before you restart any apps, before you restart the computer, before you do anything, let's gather some details. Let's find out what's going on here, because it's very possible you could restart the application or restart the computer and everything would be fine for a day. And then we'll have the problem again, because this may be a problem that occurs constantly due to a memory leak. So we want to know what's using up all the memory. And one of the best ways to find that information, Task Manager, a fantastic utility for getting real-time information about CPU, memory, disk access, network, and more. You can add on more parameters there. And you can go down the line of memory to see how much memory is being used. You can even sort that column and see what application has used up all the memory. Is it one app? Is it multiple applications? Did we think we had 8 gig of RAM in this system and it only has 4? Something like that can certainly occur. So that may be something to consider. And eventually, if there is a problem, we need more space, but we just don't have any more memory in the system, we might be able to take things that we are currently not using in the operating system and then put them off onto a storage drive using virtual memory. You might want to make sure that your virtual memory is turned on, that it is configured, and that it has a certain amount of paging size that it can use to page out of RAM to free up some space while you're able to perform those functions. And then it will bring that back off your storage drive if you ever need to use that again. So in Windows, that is our virtual memory that uses the access for the paging file in the operating system. That's exactly what it uses. So before you make any changes, because once you reboot, once you stop the application, once you restart an app, you've now lost all of the information about the problem. And if you want to solve the problem, then you will probably want to go into your task manager and be able to understand what this problem happens to be. Where is this really coming from? Is it one application? Is it multiple applications? Is it all applications? How would you even know if you didn't have a look at Task Manager? So one very common theme, not only on the CompTIA exams, but in life, is before you start making changes, let's start gathering information first. Then once we've gathered as much information that we can reasonably gather, then we can start making changes. That's an important thing to do. That way you have a very logical and methodical way of stepping through these problems. You've gathered that information and you're able to react to the information that you've gathered. So very often in my career of working as a systems engineer and trying to troubleshoot problems with other engineers is a lot of people want to make a change quickly. Let's just get it fixed. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Just do something. And they'll just start throwing things. Change a configuration file, modify that setup, change the resolution, add more memory to the system, swap out the memory in the system, upgrade the operating system, put all the patches on it. They'll just start making changes. And I would like, hold on. Is the problem related to the memory? Do we have a memory error? Nope. Well, why would we swap out the memory if we don't have a memory problem? Well, because we're just going to start doing stuff until we figure out what it is. That's a very bad way to troubleshoot. You're wasting a lot of your time and everyone else's time to do that. Let's begin gathering some metrics, because from there, you may get a very strong direction on where this particular problem is starting. You may not even understand what the root cause is yet, but you have understood why that symptom is occurring on that computer. And sometimes that's all you really need to be able to have that happen. And that's why in this case, that is the right answer. Check Task Manager. That's what you should use to solve this problem. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that gives you a 1-hour webinar category CEU just for being here, just for watching this live stream. The way that you would earn that CEU is you must follow these instructions. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You click the Contact Us link. It's at the top and the bottom. It brings up a form. You will put your name, your email, and in the subject line, please put November 2025 Core 2. In the body of the message, put the super secret code words of the month, check Task Manager. Those are your super secret code words of the month. You can also put anything else you would like in there into that. I do read through every single one of these messages, but you don't have to. If that's all you want, if that's all you need is that CEU, you're done. Hit submit and you're finished. Again, the process that you must follow to be able to receive this email is you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You click Contact Us. In that Contact Us link, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put November 2025 Core 2. And in the body of the message, put the super secret code words of the month, check Task Manager. Takes me about a week to get these done. I'm a little behind right now. It's taking me a little more than a week to get these done, but I hope to catch up here very shortly. And you will receive that email, hopefully very soon, that has the CEU and information inside of it. Again, this is commonly used for renewals. Not everybody uses these for renewals, so you don't have to do this. But a lot of people do use these CEUs, not just for renewals, but for other purposes in their professional world as well. that's something you might want to consider if you're someone who is working through the details of all of these. I think if you're working through trying to get all of the CEUs and everything else you need for renewal, you need all the help you can get. I'm more than happy to help you out with that. Let's do another question. I know we're at the top of the hour, but we can squeeze another one in here, right? I think we can get another one into this list. I thought I had a view of this that I could show on my screen. I was parsing through to be able to show you this, and for some reason, I don't have, there it is. Well, it's for the 1102, but I'm going to show this information anyway on my screen, just so you've got a feel for it. This says 1102, but I also have the 1202. For those of you that are still taking your 1100 series exams, that would be anyone who does not speak English as their primary language. I guess you could speak English as your primary language, but the older exams retire in December for Spanish, for Portuguese. I think Japanese is on there. There's other languages that you can take the older exams on until the end of the year. This is actually a little bit of a life hack. If you have already taken one of the A+ exams and you weren't able to take the other one, the other English language exam before it was retired, you could potentially take the exam in Spanish and still earn your A+ certification from the 1100 series. I also have 1200 series course notes books and practice exams books. Here they are. There's the practice exam. See, it says 1202. I have them for both sets of exams. These are a big book of practice exams. This is 3 separate practice exams in one single document. In fact, I have a copy of it on my screen that I would like to show you. Let's step through a question from my practice exams. This will be our last question of the day, I guess. As always, of course, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. This is a question number A22 from this very book that we are looking at. That A22, what page is that on? It's on page 9 of this practice exams book. The question asks, a system administrator is upgrading an email service in the corporate data center. During the upgrade, an error message appears and the upgrade fails. Subsequent attempts to perform the upgrade also fail. Somebody's having a great day. Which of the following processes should the system administrator follow to return the email server to its previous state? Would you use a rollback plan, a disaster recovery plan, an incident response plan, or a power plan? Those are your 4 options. So this does hit a little too close to home for those of you that have gone through these times where you've gone through change control. You're in the data center. It's a Sunday morning at 3 a.m. because that's the only time you're able to make this particular change. You go to perform the upgrade. It doesn't work. Like, oh, that didn't work the way it worked in the lab. Let's try it again. You try it again. Doesn't work. And then you think, why? I can't fix this. There's nobody to call who can really fix this within the window that we have. I'm running out of time for this window. We need to somehow have a process to return the email server to its previous state. What do we do? And that's the answer we're going to go with. Now, this is a PDF in its digital form. Obviously, the physical form is on paper. And because it's a PDF, you could start making annotations. If I had a stylus, I could write on the PDF. Or if there's certain things that you want to highlight in the PDF, you can do that with the annotation features of your PDF reader, certainly available to you. One of the things that you'll also notice is that to be able to see the answer to this, whether it's A, B, C, or D, the quick answer, we need to go to page 33. But if we want a detailed overview of the answer, we need to go to page 60. Well, as I mentioned earlier, we're on page 9. So those of you that are used to working with a PDF, you would think, well, I need to scroll, or with my mouse wheel, scroll down to page 60. No, you don't. Because I knew you would need to go to page 60. I put a hot link in here. Notice that turns into a little hand. And if I click on the words, the details, it takes me to page 60. Really does. Down here, if we look at the bottom, page 60 right there. So we just jumped over to page 60. It shows me the same question with the same answers. And then it tells me the answer is A rollback plan. And of course, like many of these types of exams, it tells you why that's the right answer. The problem for me, though, is I never get the right answer. I'm always getting wrong answers. So if I was to answer incident response plan, I want to know why that isn't the right answer. There's a great opportunity here to learn. There's an amazing opportunity to close that circle so that if we ever see these again, we will know what they are referring to. So not only in my book, not only do you see what the right answer is, I document why the wrong answers are also wrong. So you see why disaster recovery plan, and I explain why disaster recovery plan is not the right answer. You also have incident response plan, and I explain why incident response plan is not the right answer, and a power plan, which is also built into Windows, but not part of this problem. And I explain why the power plan would not be that particular answer. And if you've read through the question and you've read through the answers and you're thinking, this is not the strongest topic for me, I need more overview of this particular series of topics, I put a connection, a link to the video that was used to create this question to begin with. So if you don't understand the nomenclature, there's some terms that I'm throwing out here that you're just not familiar with, or you feel like you could be more familiar with it, well, there's the video. It's 220.1202, Objective 4.2, Change Management. Here's a direct link to the video. If you have the book, you obviously can't click on the book, but I did put QR codes in there. They're real QR codes. They're legitimate QR codes. You can look at the URL before you go, and it will be the same URL that you see here, professormesser.link/1202040201. So that takes you to this video for change management. And once you've gone through and you've looked at the question, you've looked at the answer, you've looked at the wrong answers, you really now have a better understanding of the topic. We're still on page 60, but one thing you may not know is most PDF readers have a back button. Mine is up here in the upper left. So you can click the back button, click, and we're back to where we started. There you go. Now you go to the next question that's on your list with A23 down here at the bottom. That's my practice exams book, and that's another way that you can focus on understanding what the important things are to know with these exams. I think it's another good way to become a lot more familiar with the topics. If you're someone who's trying to get through all of these myriad topics, just a huge hundreds and hundreds of topics you need to know, this might be a good way to help you. You can use the same link on the screen, professormesser.com/core2pe, to get the Core 2, the 1202 Core 2 practice exams book, or just simply follow the menus at the top of the Professor Messer website. Well, we have gone through an hour of Q&A, but we're not done yet. We have another hour of Q&A coming up, but this Q&A is not one that I have written. This is one that you have written. As I mentioned earlier, you can go to that same link, professormesser.com/QA, and you can go through those to understand more about what you would choose to be able to answer or to ask of me so I can answer them for you. So submit your questions at any time following that same link that is on the screen. We also have our course notes and practice exams available on our site, professormesser.com/1202success, or use the menus at the top of the screen. Don't forget about our discounted vouchers. These are the same vouchers that are available on the CompTIA website, but if you're in the US or Canada, they're discounted. In some cases, you can save quite a bit of cash. So have a look at those at professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, if you're on the internet, that's where we happen to be. Find us at professormesser.com/discord/x/YouTube and others. It's a great place to find out what you might be able to learn from the daily pop quiz questions, the information that's going back and forth, the comments that people are putting in, and a great way to network with other people. Well, that brings us to the end of our first hour. Stick around in just a couple moments. We'll start our after show where I'll take questions from you. Thank you so much for joining us in this first hour. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody. Okay, I'm going to quickly take a sip because I need it desperately. Make that happen. And we have other things that we can look at here. Let me bring over myself. And there we go. It all works. One of the challenges with not streaming for a couple of weeks is you get back in the studio and all these buttons are very unusual. How does any of this work at all? Sort of the problem if you're somebody trying to, there's a lot of buttons to push. I'll lean back here, not to mention the ones down here. Can't even see the buttons down there. There's more down there. We've got buttons down on the right side. There's a lot here. And they don't all do exactly what I thought they would do sometimes. They sometimes have their own minds about them, but that's okay. We are in fine shape. We can absolutely work through that. Let's now go through the questions that you have submitted. This is what we call our after show. And in the after show, you can certainly submit questions at any time for the after show using that same link we had before, professormesser.com/QA. There's a link right at the top. You can choose to submit your questions. And I will, of course, take questions during this part of the live stream as well. We can make that happen. The first thing I need to do is I've been doing this for an hour in this relatively small room, and it's warm outside here in Florida. So I am going to turn on a little bit of AC to keep things going the way we should. Yeah, I've worked hard to minimize the number of monitors and buttons and things for this live stream. It used to be that I had another room that I had a rack, a full 19-inch rack, all the full size, and had a bunch of equipment in there for streaming and connectivity. But now I've got everything sort of brought back to the desk. Everything is on the desk now. I have 19-inch racks on the left and right. I fit as much information as I can on the top. You can't really see the lights anymore, but the lights are connected to the desk. It really is a very streamlined way to do it. I like having everything in one place. It's another great way to do it. So now let's talk about the questions that you might have. I think now I should focus on going through a few of those. What I usually will do is go through the questions you've submitted, and we'll talk about the things that are interesting for you. We could be talking about certifications. We can talk about IT. We can talk about technology in general, or talk about anything else. I probably won't talk about anything else. We'll probably focus on technology at least as we're going through this. And we can discuss a lot of different things that have been occurring. I think we talked a lot today already about the Cloudflare outage from yesterday. That was certainly a challenge to get through and work with all these. But I think there's good places to go with this. This first one is an option for people that are doing this. A lot of people say they're going through my video course. They've got a good book. They've got my practice exams, but some people have often said, I would really like to get more hands-on. There's a lot of command lines here. There's a lot of things happening with Windows. I really want to focus on understanding this sort of at the keyboard level, which is, I think, a great thing to consider. It's a thing that we recommend. In fact, if you are going through your studies, we prefer what we call the wrap method, where we are watching the videos, we are reading a book, we are applying what we've learned by going through labs, and we are practicing with our practice exams. So Devin sends in a message that says, hello and good morning, Professor. I passed Core 1 Monday with a score of 817 using only your success bundle. Congratulations on your Core 1 exam, Devin. That's always good. Now we just got to get through the Core 2. So Devin continues and says, I am contemplating purchasing the Core 2 labs that CompTIA offers. Do you recommend these labs, and are they worth the money? Well, I guess worth the money is sort of a very subjective question, but why don't we look at them? I think I've got the labs here on my system. I'm going to log into my CompTIA account, and let's kind of go through the Core 2 labs. If you go to login.comptia.com, it's a single login you have to the CompTIA website, and they will present to you everything that you have in your study list. And in fact, because I'm a CompTIA partner, they were nice enough to send me licenses for CertMaster Labs, CertMaster Learn, CertMaster Study, CertMaster Perform. So I've got a lot of options in here. We were specifically talking about the Core 2 labs. Let's study the Core 2 labs. We're going to start them right now. How about a little demo? We'll do this a little bit. These labs are also available for purchase on the Professor Messer website. They are at a discount over what you would use to purchase them on the CompTIA website. One of the things I like about their labs is there's a lot of them, and they're very well thought out. They go through each section. So on the left side of the screen is a little outline view of exactly the type of labs that they have, the different categories or different chapters that they have. For example, they have a what does an IT specialist do? It starts with creating a ticket, closing a ticket using a help desk system. There's a configuring Windows section, and everywhere you see one of these little mices, one of these little micin, this is where there's a lab. You could explore Windows settings, require a screensaver password, configure desktop settings, and then, of course, it goes down from there. This is all in a browser, by the way. I didn't have to install any software. Let's do one. I haven't done some of these, so I have no idea what the lab is like. If we were to go through it, let's do a Windows lab. We will configure Windows. Let's explore Windows settings. That should be a pretty generic one. Our task in this lab is to set the display resolution to 1920 by 1080, set the screensaver to ribbons, configure the screensaver to activate after it's been idle for 10 minutes, require the user to log in before resuming. So a lot of people in the chat room were saying, that looks a lot like Test Out. Guess who bought Test Out 2 years ago? CompTIA did. So the format, very similar to that, but they've taken kind of their labs and the Test Out labs and scrunched them into one single mega lab, if you want to look at it that way. Let's start the lab, everybody. Let's click the button, see what happens. This is a type of lab. Notice how quickly that starts up, because it is one that uses that technology from Test Out to be able to do this very quickly. So they give you a way in the left-hand side to kind of set you through what you should be doing. And they tell you on the left side, the settings box, well, let's see, right-click the desktop, then choose Display Settings. We've got a view here. We can choose Display Settings. It brings up the display settings for the Windows setup. Choose the desired resolution from the Display Resolution dropdown. And so we have different options available. This one said we needed to set it to 1920 by 1080. So notice it kind of walks you through. You can decide how much of this you want to step by step, or you can simply take the very broad description they have and you can have it set it that way. And you just work through it until you are done. And then at the end of this particular lab, once we've gone through all of this, we can then have it grade us on how we did. There's a score lab option at the top. Now, I've only changed the resolution. I haven't changed anything else, but we're going to score my lab to see how badly I did. I got a 25%. How sad. I was able to set the display resolution to 1920 by 1080, but I didn't set the screensaver. I didn't wait 10 minutes, and I didn't require a password. So that's an example of how these labs work. Not only is there this lab, and we can go back to this outline, but there are, I didn't count how many, but I guess we could very quickly. How many labs would be in this list? Let's see if we can count them. The first one that's in section 1 is very simple. So we'll start with section 2, where we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. We're going to keep going, everybody. Go to section 5. 36, 37, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 42, 45, 46, 47. So now we're up to about 50. If I'm just eyeballing it, about 60, maybe 70. So maybe 70 plus, 75, 80 labs that are in here. There's lots of labs. There's tons of labs. There's plenty in here for the Core 2. There are both labs for Core 1 and Core 2 available. This is the Core 2 labs. There's a lot here to go through. And it's one that you can bring up in a browser. It works great. And you're in good shape here to do any of these different lab configurations. Maybe setting IP settings on, let's do Windows 11 because it's unlikely you're going to see Windows 10. Similar thing. Here's your IP address settings. We start the lab and now we're doing another lab just by clicking and going. So this is a great way to go about learning a bit more. You're not changing your Windows configuration. You're having someone step you through the formal configuration. Not a bad setup. So if you're interested in labs, I really like the CompTIA labs. They have spent years honing this and making it something that's good. And another option, another thing that's important about this is we were looking at the, let me close this window. So we were looking at this list on the side with, we have a chapter 1, what does an IT specialist do? Chapter 2, managing support procedures. Chapter 3, configuring Windows. This is the same format across all of the CertMaster products. So if you already have the book, the CertMaster book that is associated with this, it follows the same chapters. If you have CertMaster Practice, the practice takes you through the same chapters. So that's something that's kind of nice too. If you're looking for some consistency between all of these, that certainly works as well. I do recommend the labs. I think they are worth the money. They're not incredibly expensive. They've done a good job of keeping the price down. And 70 plus labs, 75, 80. I should probably count how many. There are quite a bit. I feel like I've counted that number before. I'll have to bring it up on my website and see if I really did count how many were in that list. There were a lot. Another good way to do it. Oh, we have labs available for the 1201, 1202, the Network Plus, the Security Plus, and others as well. It might be a good way to learn a little bit more about the Windows operating system and others because they're all in one single place, being able to work through it. Let's see what other things we can bring up on this list. I was going to look real quick and see if I wrote down how many labs were in here. I thought I did. If you will bear with me one moment, I'm going to click a few things. And did I put the number in here? I don't think I did. But I think I did plan. I planned to put the number in, but I did not. But it's in there. We already counted. We did a pretty good job on that one. So that's my recommendation. Hopefully it's something you can use as well. There are other labs out there on the market. You're welcome to look at those as well. Those just happen to be on my website, and they happen to be available at a discount over the CompTIA website version. Let's keep going through this list. This is a very common question we get, and I think it's worth talking about because I don't think we often think of it in the right way. This is a question from my good friend Anonymous, who asks, what sort of approach would you recommend for the PBQs that you might not be familiar with / completely stumped? So as I mentioned earlier, performance-based questions, or PBQs, are a handful of questions you will get at the beginning of your exam that are simply anything but multiple choice questions. So they could be fill in the blank. They could be a matching question. You could be putting things in a particular order. They might put you at a command prompt. They might put you at a Windows desktop. There's lots of things that could happen there. So one of the things you also will notice with performance-based questions, it's hard to guess by design. CompTIA really wants to know if you are familiar with the topics associated with the performance-based question. So they are not going to give you a gimme, and they're not going to make it so that you can figure out what the answer is if you don't know what the technology does. These questions are specifically written to prevent that. But here is the number one study guide that I can recommend that will help you understand every possible question that could be asked of you on both performance-based questions and multiple choice-based questions, and it's your exam objectives. This is, in my mind, one of the types of study materials that every single person should have, and not enough people have this. These are like gold for your A+ studies. This is the CompTIA version of Bitcoin. This is what you want to get, and you want to hold, and you want to keep, because this will tell you everything you need to know about the exams. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, let's step through it. These are the exam objectives. These are available first. Where do you get these from? They're on the CompTIA website. Let me bring up a view of this. I'm just going to go to CompTIA.org. This is the screen that comes up for CompTIA.org. And since we are talking about A+, I'm going to go under certifications right here at the top. Click. I'm going to choose all, because I want to show you all the certifications they have. Here's the big list of certifications on the CompTIA website. We're only doing one of these. It's the very first one, A+. Not A+ Network, not A+ Cyber with the lowercase a, just simply A+ with the uppercase A that says Plus Series on it. That's the icon there that says Plus Series. We're going to click that, and it's going to take us to a screen that says, okay, well, there's a lot of A+. Do you want the A+ Core 1, A+ Core 2, or A+ Core 1 and 2 for the newer version, or do you want A+ Core 1, A+ Core 2, or A+ Core 1 and 2 for the retiring version? Those will stay there until December, and once the non-English language exams are retired, those last three icons will go away, and we'll just be left with Core 1, Core 2, and Core 1 and 2 together. They're right there. Now, since we're today working on Core 2, I'm going to choose Core 2. Actually, I'm going to choose Core 1 and 2 because eventually you will want to take Core 1 and Core 2. It brings us up to a screen that has an exam objectives summary. Well, summary is not what we were hoping for, was it? We needed more than just a summary. And it does have a nice summary here, but one of the things I'll recommend you do is scroll, 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 keep scrolling, keep going, go down past, and then finally get to a red box. Here's your red box. And this red box says, get A+ exam objectives and practice questions. Aha, that's what we wanted. That's exactly where we wanted to go. They simply need an email address. You click access now. I guess I have to, by submitting the form, I agree to the privacy notice and authorize CompTIA to contact me. Access now, and that's it. Now that I put my email address in, the Core 1 V15 exam objectives in English and the Core 2 V15 exam objectives in English. So there's our Core 1 and Core 2 exam objectives. You can download those, and if you download those, you get this. So there is where we got this from. And indeed, it does show you that it is the Core 2, and it is for the 220-1202. That is the exam we plan on taking. This is what you want. Now, I told you this is a valuable tool. What's inside here that makes it more valuable? This is a view that shows you this is what the exam is like. This is what the accreditation does. This is the development. This is their authorized materials use policy, and it gives you other information about the exam. And it tells you that the test is the Core 2 220-1202. You get a maximum of 90 questions, multiple choice. So it's a nice overview of the exam and the different domains you can expect to see on this exam. They even tell you about Windows 11. This is really appropriate for now because, as many of you know, Windows 10 was end of life, end of support. Was it last month? So now we have just Windows 11 is the only supported operating system from Microsoft for the desktop. And it does tell you that versions of Microsoft Windows that are not end of mainstream support is determined by Microsoft up to and including Windows 11 are intended content areas of the certification. And it does say that if it's out of support, you don't need to know it. So anytime you see Windows 10 on anything that you're reading, not going to be applied to this version of the exam going forward. They kind of built in that. Here's the valuable part though. Let's go to the next page. Now we go through each domain, there are 4 domains on this exam: operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. And under operating systems, you have section 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, 1.9, 1.10, 1.11. Okay, and then we go to security. So in each one of these subdomains, I'm going to call them, subdomain 1.1 says, explain common operating system OS types and their purposes. So you need to know workstation systems like Windows, Linux, Mac OS, and Chrome OS. You understand mobile operating systems such as iPad OS, iOS, and Android. You also need to know various file system types, including NTFS, REFS, FAT32, ext4, XFS, APFS, and exFAT. You also have to understand vendor lifecycle limitations, end-of-life EOL, and update limitations. And lastly, compatibility concerns between operating systems. That's one subdomain of a much larger domain right at the beginning of the exam. But there's everything you need to know about those topics. CompTIA does a very good job of giving you not just a list of the topics, but the detail for each one of the topics that you would need to know. So they've given you, in fact, very specific file systems. You don't need to know any other file systems except the ones that are listed in this list. Why? And that's something I think is important because you will see older exam materials out there that are either not updated to the latest version, or they will simply change the number on their questions and promote it as if it is the most recent questions, when in reality, these are updated quite a bit. There are new topics in this list. There are old topics that were thrown out. If you want to be sure that you are really studying the right materials, you need to reference this document. This is extremely important to have this. And it's a great checklist. Now you can go through each one of these things, and if you can explain to yourself or someone else what that particular topic refers to, why it's important to know what that is, and how it fits into the bigger scheme of technology, then you've accomplished, you know that topic, you've got that one down, you can mark that one with a big check mark. If you get to a topic you're thinking, REFS, I don't know that one offhand. I'm not even sure what operating system that uses, why I would need REFS. How is REFS better or worse than any of these others? When would I expect to find it? Those are the things that you would run into. So I think that this is where you might want to mark that one and say, I need to go back and look at REFS. But FAT32, I know. FAT32 I've used a lot, so we can put a check mark on FAT32, but we need to put maybe mark REFS in red so I know to come back to that one. This is what is going to give you the feedback you need to understand if you're learning the content you need to know, if you are absorbing and really retaining the content. And this is a great checklist to give you that validation that you are either ready or not ready to go sit for this exam. Also, all of the performance-based questions will be based on these exam objectives. CompTIA rarely, if ever, goes outside the scope of these objectives. That's how tight they stay with these objectives. They could ask you anything, but they don't. They stick to this list, which is why I tell people all the time, if you go through this entire list on every page and you check every one of these bullets and you know how to describe that technology to someone else and you really understand what they're asking for, then you are ready to take your exam and you will crush it because they don't leave this list. This is exactly what you need to know before you walk into the exam room. That's how valuable this particular document is. And as you just saw, I downloaded this document for free. So there's no money you would have to spend to get your hands on this list. The other thing that's useful, at least as it applies to my training course, is all of my videos, my course notes, and everything are based on this same structure. So if you were to look at the very first video on my course, I talk about operating systems. If you look at like the second or third video on my course, it talks about file system types. If you look at the others there, it just follows the same path because I also used this as my checklist when I created the course. That just makes it better for everyone to be able to work through this. So hopefully that's given you some ideas of things you can use to get around concerns you might have about the performance-based questions. I think a lot of people worry about performance-based questions for no good reason, because I think they believe the performance-based questions are much harder than they are going to be, and perhaps they don't realize that they're coming directly from the exam objectives. One of the most common responses I get from people that have taken their exam and they've come back to tell me, hey, I passed this exam. You know what? The performance-based questions were not as hard as I thought they were going to be. It's such a common theme. They're not trying to trick you. They're not trying to create a question that can't be solved. You're not trying to solve world hunger. You're not trying to get rid of cancer. You're just trying to know what is listed in the exam objectives and understand it and be able to present it. I often say, as long as you know the objectives, it really doesn't matter how they ask the question. They could ask it as multiple choice. They could ask it as fill in the blank. They could ask to put us in a different structure to drag and drop. As long as you know the content, you will be able to answer performance-based questions. Do not worry about those. There have even been situations where people have said, I took the entire exam. I skipped over the performance-based questions at the beginning because you can do that. You can go next, 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 next. Let's just go to multiple choice. And they went through all the multiple choice questions, but they weren't looking at the clock. And they came back to do the very first performance-based question. Message came up, said, timer is over. 90 minutes is done. Your exam is finished. Let's see how you did. Click this button to see your score. They didn't get to do any performance-based questions. Like, oh no, I wasn't looking at the clock. I didn't do any performance-based questions. All right, score it. They clicked the button and they passed. They passed. They passed without doing any performance-based questions. Now, that isn't something that will happen all the time. That is not something you can predict. CompTIA doesn't tell us how they score their exams. Each question is worth a different number of points. So in that particular exam for that particular person on that particular day at that particular testing center, they were able to get through all of the multiple choice questions, and that was enough to get them a passing score. That may not be the case with you. So make sure you are familiar as you are going through all of these, that you are very, very comfortable with the topics, and I think you'll do fine on performance-based questions. I don't recommend leaving performance-based questions blank, however. That is not what I am saying. I'm saying that you could still pass. If something goes awry, if something goes wrong, do not be dejected. Do not be thrown in the middle of the exam. Simply focus on the details of this. Let's keep going through questions. We still have time, so I'm going to bring up, in fact, I should bring up my clock. One moment, please, so I can see what's going on. Other questions. We have this one. So a lot of the things that we were doing in our course and some of the things we even saw today were at the command line. And so it is certainly common and usual for people to wonder, is this really useful? Can I really use this? I'm spending a lot of time at the keyboard typing in NS lookup. The IP address is 192.160. You're typing and typing and typing. You're wondering, why am I doing this? We have a mouse. We could just click things on the screen. Why am I having to type? And it's not a situation where you couldn't use a mouse, but sometimes you don't have the choice. And that brings us to the question that was asked by Anonymous. Anonymous, very busy today, and says, in Linux, do you really use the terminal a lot in corporate situations? Aren't you just using your mouse and your keyboard? Why are we having to learn all these commands with the ls command and the df command and the tail command and the grep command? Why am I doing this? Are we ever really going to use the terminal? Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, you are. Oh, yes, you are quite a bit. One of the things that is very, very useful and relatively unique about Linux is you can effectively do everything at the command line. Everything. It's not necessarily the case with Windows. Windows has gotten a lot better about that in recent years, especially with the advent of PowerShell, because PowerShell is able to do quite a bit at the command line of Windows as well, but it's not as easy to get to PowerShell without Windows. There are ways to do it, but it's not quite as seamless as Linux is, because with Linux, it's just built into and part of the operating system from day one. So I can see why people might wonder, is Linux really something where I need to know the command line? And in a lot of cases, absolutely. There are a few reasons for this. The first one is the command line is amazingly efficient because it is exactly the same every time. You get a command line. Let's pop up my command line. Here we go. We were doing this earlier. When you start the command prompt in your system, whether it's Windows or Linux or whatever happens to be, mine is Mac OS. There we are. We are on Mac OS. So here's my Mac OS terminal screen. When I start terminal in Mac OS or Linux or really even Windows, I'm presented with a prompt and a cursor. That's it. And it's exactly the same every time. So if I needed to run an automated script, if I needed to run something that can perform a function for me rather than me interactively typing things in, this is a great environment to do it because it will perform the first task, then it will perform the second, then it will perform the third, all in order based on the way the script is written. I have a number of scripts that I use when I'm updating things like web server certificates. And I start the script and it runs through the whole thing. It takes a number of seconds and it's done. And I don't have to type a lot of things. I don't have to interact with it. In other words, I don't have to mess it up by typing in the wrong thing. And it does it very, very quickly. And because I'm at the command line, it allows me to do that. The other part that's nice about this is that everything at the command prompt is done with not a lot of bandwidth. There's no graphics going back and forth. There's no images. There's no video. There's no additional traffic. So if you are using a connection that is not the best in the world, you could be communicating to a device on the other side of the world that is connected to you using Starlink, using some other type of non-terrestrial connection. Maybe it's over a very slow dial-up line. You will occasionally find one of those every once in a while. Maybe it's just over a poorly connected DSL link running at a very slow. It's even hard to transfer files because the bandwidth is so bad. But when you're working at the command line, you're not using any bandwidth. Well, relatively low bandwidth. You're not doing anything now, but if you were to type the ls command in, you would then see the results of the ls command, and it's just transmitting text, which is very, very, very minimal bandwidth to be able to deal with this. And because we can effectively do anything we need to do at the command line, You can change configurations of an application. You can install apps. You can remove apps. You can change certificates. You can modify the drive configurations. You can update the video settings. You can change drivers. You can recompile the kernel. You can do anything that you need to do with the operating system at the command line. Why wouldn't you start there? There are things you can't do very easily from a graphical interface using a keyboard and a mouse. First, you're using a lot of bandwidth, relatively speaking. And there are functions within that graphical front end that are somewhat difficult to do unless you're at a command prompt. So it sort of wastes your time. Why would you start in a big graphical environment and then simply bring up a terminal screen? Now you've wasted all of that time and the bandwidth and everything else just to get to the point when you could have just started here. In fact, the Professor Messer website doesn't even have, it's a Linux machine. I don't even go into a graphical front end. I do everything from the command line on that Linux machine because it's just so easy and fast and convenient. I can do it on my phone on a bad 3G connection, which I do occasionally will run into. I can SSH into my Linux server, make a configuration change, hit enter, and I'm done. And I can go off and do whatever I'm doing. So that's another good reason for making that happen. I think these are incredibly useful to know. So if you are worried that maybe going through the terminal and learning all these command lines might not be useful, it's actually the opposite. It's much more valuable to know things at the command line very often than doing anything in a graphical front end. There will still be times when you have to use a graphical front end. Maybe somebody is having a graphics problem and you need to see the resolution on the screen. Certainly, we're not saying everything in the world should be done at the command line, just 99% of it. That's pretty much what you'll run into, I think. And as I mentioned, I've had my Professor Messer website running for, 20 years and never touched a graphical front end on that website. Never, never, never. So it's another good example of that. Let's keep going through this list of things. Some of you even asked the question that I answered earlier about the path ping command for Linux. As I mentioned, MTR is a good example of a path ping. Let me see if I can find the MTR breakdown. I don't want to run MTR on my network. I guess I could, but it's not quite the same. But there is a great utility in Linux that is the mytraceroute. And I'm trying to find the mytraceroute software website. I'm going to have to, this is one of those times where you have to go to Wikipedia just to find the official website for something because Google doesn't search for things anymore. Sort of where we are. So poor Google, they don't know what to do at this point. Are we not searching things? Are we searching things? What are we good for now? We're really not sure. We're going to figure that out eventually. MTR combines sort of traceroute and ping into a single network diagnostic tool, and it tells you where you can get it. You can get it from GitHub. Here's a secure place to get it from. There are even binary distributions here as well. I think there's also a utility someone put together called WinMTR for Windows, WinMTR. So if you're in a Windows operating system, you can have the same functionality, but in MTR. Pretty useful to have that there. So another one of those utilities, I use MTR all the time. Incredibly useful, especially when I'm having problems in the studio and I'm wondering, is this something I did on my local network? Is this a problem that's out on my provider network? Is it something that's beyond my provider's network? MTR is a great use of that. It's sort of a path ping, but a much faster path ping to be able to use it. Let me see if I can even bring up, since I am here, let's see if I can just go to my router here. So at least I can show you something. There's not much to see when I just go to my router. Let me do one that's to a different, how about 10.1.1.2? Okay. This is a pretty good one to use because this is on a local network, sort of local. This is MTR, my trace route. MTR is a tool. In this case, I'm going from my local machine, which is named Odyssey, and it's at 10.1.10.13. And it's doing an MTR to 10.1.1.2, which is still a 10.network, but it's not my 10.network. It's my provider's 10.network. I don't even want to talk about it. But they're doing quite a bit of natting and manipulation. Like I often say, it's just remarkable any of this works at all. You can see that between my workstation and this 10 dot address, there are 3 hops. There's 10.1.10.1, it's my local router. There's 100.121.18.1, that is my provider's router that is doing kind of a large scale NAT. There is a type of natting and a series of private addresses we don't talk about on A+, Network Plus. I don't think even Cisco CCNA talks about these larger scale natting IP address ranges, but this range that starts with the 100 dot, there's a series of ranges within that is used for provider scale natting. So that is one that it's a private IP address. You're effectively going from my private IP address to their private IP address, which is natting me to another private IP address, which then finally puts me onto the internet. Is this the best way to do it? Probably not. Probably would not be the best way to do it, but at least I can show you 3 hops in MTR. And those 3 hops, you can see that to my local network, there was at least some packet loss that occurred recently because I got 1.9% packet loss out of the 110 packets that I've sent. I can see the last response time along with the average, the best, the worst, and a standard deviation. Notice that the standard deviation gets bigger, you statistics nerds, as you get farther away. That makes a little bit of sense, doesn't it? No packet loss, though, out on the provider network, so that part's good. So I can't complain about my provider today. They're doing a great job. We've had this up and running. The number of packets lost is not bad. We're doing just fine with this. So absolutely, you should be familiar with MTR as well. Not for the exams, but sort of for you, for your life, as you do things, as it is associated with Linux and other operating systems. That can be pretty useful as well. And we do have time for some more questions. The question earlier today, I was talking all about Cloudflare. If you missed that in the first hour, I highly recommend you go back and go through our performance-based question today, because I did talk a lot about the Cloudflare outage, how it manifested itself, and ultimately what we discovered as being the problem. R, who sent me a note, who said, hey, where were you following the news about Cloudflare? This is the problem, isn't it? When you have a huge service like Amazon Web Service, like Azure Cloud from Microsoft, or like Cloudflare, where a huge amount of the internet runs on this service, when there's a problem, where do you go to get information about the problem? Because now the internet is down, or at least a large percentage of the internet is down. In fact, if you were to come to my website during the Cloudflare outage, you would not have gotten there. You would have gotten the error message that we saw earlier that I had, where, nope, Cloudflare not working, can't get there. So if I wanted to go to all of the different sites that I would normally go to get news, I probably would not have been able to get there. However, not everybody on the internet uses Cloudflare, fortunately. Perhaps even most importantly, the status pages from Cloudflare do not use Cloudflare. You would think, wait, why wouldn't Cloudflare use their own service to do this? Because it's the status service. Cloudflare certainly uses their own products to provide some of their products, no question. But if you go to the Cloudflare status page, which is cloudflarestatus.com, it gives you a list of the system status information. In fact, it tells us that Hong Kong's Cloudflare node is under scheduled maintenance and it's currently in progress. And they'll be doing this for a little bit longer. They're also doing an update in Osaka. They've got Seoul has some work, Melbourne. But let's go back to yesterday, shall we? Do they even have yesterday's numbers on here? Did they take it down? I guess they didn't. Did they not have an archive that I could see? One nice thing, though, is they do have a notification process so that you don't have to interactively go to this page. If there is a problem with Cloudflare, they will have the problem listed on this page and tell you about what they're doing. In fact, you can see we've got some sites that are rerouted, some that are operational, some that are partially rerouted. Let's go down here. That's Asia. Can we break these down? There's Africa, Asia, Europe, Latin America. We're in the U.S., North America side. And if we look at the U.S. nodes, everything here is working. If you're in Detroit, Cloudflare is being rerouted right now, probably to one of the nearby nodes. You've also got a rerouting happening in Norfolk. You've also got rerouting happening in Anchorage. So as far as the rest of the U.S., we're in good shape. So that's how I know, or at least had an idea what was going on. And there was a lot of speculation. Fortunately, things like Reddit not running on Cloudflare, the Cloudflare status not on Cloudflare. There were some other places. But unfortunately, when these types of problems occur, and this is something that I've mentioned very, very often on these live streams, is that if you're going to a news site to get news about technology, they get it wrong all the time. They're almost consistent in how wrong they are because they're always wrong in some way. But as I also mentioned, you can't expect someone with a journal who's a journalist who's gone to journalism school. They got a degree in literature and marketing and journalism. They are not computer experts. So they're just trying to decipher all of this crazy technology and put it into a form that people can understand. And sometimes they don't make the translation right. I can't really blame them for that. We have chances to fix that later on. That seemed to happen yesterday as well with the Cloudflare outage, because the Cloudflare outage immediately came with people saying Cloudflare is under attack. Cloudflare is suffering from denial of service attack. Cloudflare is down because of a pick your favorite political thing. There were a lot of stories made that something horrible was going on because of the evil, bad people taking over Cloudflare and creating problems for all of us. And as I mentioned then, and obviously it's now we know what happened, so it's not much of a reach now. But I said, hold on, we don't know that any of this was malicious. Could have been, but we don't know. We don't know that any of this was something that was a bad actor. We don't know if somebody just tripped over a power cord, which happens. It's sort of a normal part of what we do. At somewhere on your network is one thing that if that one thing went away, your network would disappear. And it's very difficult to get rid of all of those one things. In this particular case, the problem was not a bad actor. It was not an attacker. It was not a cybersecurity incident. It was not the world ending. It wasn't any of those things. It was a configuration file that got too big and it broke the software. That was it. It took down the entire service. That was it. And that's what it sometimes happens. Is that, well, we didn't see that one coming. We didn't think that application would create so many entries that it would effectively overload itself. We told the application to eat more, chew on this, and the application said, I can't eat that. I can't, nope, I'm done. We're out of here. Boom, all missing. The whole system just stops. And that's exactly what happened. In the big scheme of things, it was probably a better thing to have happened than the alternative, because the configuration file that was being, that had an overflow associated with it, however you want to describe that, it got too big. That particular function was one that protects all Cloudflare customers against bots and other types of attacks. So there were so many attacks that we had so many entries that it broke the thing that protects us against attacks. Well, I would much rather my service fail instead of letting in attacks. So if I had to choose, I don't like the failure. I'm not happy with the downtime. It did create problems for myself and other people that had services on Cloudflare, but at least it didn't let any bad guys in. So there is an upside. There's always a silver lining, and that was the silver lining I found with that one, is that that's exactly the type of things you would run into with Cloudflare. And I'm pretty happy that they ultimately found the problem quickly. They got it back up and running, and a couple hours later, the service was doing just fine. I did have other services that I use. I use a lot of automation. I use a lot of the things that you receive from me when you buy a product are all done automatically behind the scenes. The service that does my automation uses Cloudflare. So not only could you not get to my site, when my site finally came up, the site that I used to automate things wasn't quite up yet because of all the things they had to do to reset their systems. So there's a little bit of time that it took. It took almost all day to finally get rid of all of the problems, get all of the third parties straightened out, get everything running smoothly again. And then Everything's fine now. That's how that works. The question in the chat room was, well, can companies seek reimbursement for the downtime because of a breach of the SLA? What SLA are you referring to? I don't have an SLA with Cloudflare. I don't believe I do. There is a Cloudflare terms of service. I believe the terms of service themselves have legal text within them that says, hey, if we break, sorry, it's not us, not on us. We will not take responsibility for any outages, downtime, financial problems. There's always some type of indemnity clause within these terms of service so that people can't show up and say, I was down because of your configuration file problem and I lost $1 million. I would like you to send me now $1 million because I just made up the number and that's what it was. So that's why. That's why there is not a clause for that. Now, I'm sure there are customers of Cloudflare that are very, very, very big. Perhaps they have a formal contract with Cloudflare where they have built into the contract a series of service level agreements where both the customers agreed to these service level agreements and the penalties, and Cloudflare has agreed to these service levels and the penalties. If that is the case, then for that particular customer who has that particular contract and those particular service levels were not found to be working the way they would expect in the contract, then perhaps there are some penalties associated with it. What are those penalties? It's whatever's in the contract. Do we get a discount? Do we get money back? Do we get penalties? Do you have to dance a jig? Do you have to bring me a soda? Or is there free coffee? You can put anything you'd like into a contract. So I would say most companies could not get a reimbursement for that downtime because we did not have a contractual agreement that states that the downtime would result in some type of specific penalty. That would be a service level agreement, but that A in SLA means that both sides have to agree to this before that is put into place. And I have no formal service level agreement that I have put in place with Cloudflare, with really most of my service providers. Most service providers at my level would not entertain any type of SLA like that. I think I might have an SLA with my previous ISP. I had a business level service through my ISP that granted me, I think it was a 2 or 4 hour turnaround time to get someone on site to replace my router for that service. And I thought I would never use that until one Sunday morning I woke up, and I think it was after a storm. Sunday morning I wake up and nothing is working. The entire router's dead. It just failed. It failed, or it was hit by lightning. There was a power surge, something. I was able to determine we got power on the power supply, but none of that power is going into the router. I called them and said, I'm down. My router's dead. They ran a couple of quick things. They go, yep, we can't see it either. Someone will be there in 2 hours. And on a Sunday morning in a relatively small area of Florida, we had someone show up with the router, plugged it in, got it up and running, and an hour later he was out the door and I was up for the rest of the day. We were good, going forward. They just replaced the router right then. So I did have a nice SLA. So there's a good example where an SLA might actually help you a little bit. Cloudflare, not so much. Not so much. I know we're at the top of the hour. I want to get one more in here. There are a lot of great questions I got about AI. And this is something I think the industry is struggling with as well. A year ago, all we heard was that the world was ending for all technical people because we will never have a job again. We'll never, AI will replace every single one of us, and there's no way that we would ever hire technical people again. Ha, ha, ha. You're going to have to go do something else for a living. And how'd that go, by the way? Just checking in. Turns out, didn't go very well for the people that wanted that to happen. It went very well for us, however. The question that I got in the chat room was, what's my take on AI taking all the future IT jobs? All I really am asking at this point is, what jobs are you talking about and what are they going to do? Because we haven't yet seen anything relating to AI that has any large scale replacement of people. It just didn't happen, did it? In fact, we're kind of looking at AI now, kind of side eye, like, you said you were going to be pretty good. What happened there? Why did we not get all of these great things? We had a lot of companies spend millions or even billions of dollars on this technology. Where is it? What did it do? As I've always mentioned, there are places where AI makes a lot of sense. When you're working with big data, when you're trying to solve big problems, you really are trying to solve cancer, you're trying to cure cancer, you need AI. You need something that can programmatically look through large amounts of data, find correlations, and be able to present to you its inferences based on the programming that we provided for that. In my world of AI, I get pictures of dogs on a boat drinking a martini. That's it. That is the extent of what AI has done for me to make my life better. And I'm not sure if better is a great way to describe that. So we really haven't seen the return of these promises that we were given a year ago. And as you're starting to see in the news, companies are starting to notice this too. They've spent millions of dollars because everybody else was, and we didn't want to be left behind. Well, it turns out the ones that didn't invest any money actually may be doing better than the ones that did. Now, as I mentioned, of course, there are certain places where that does not apply in the world of pharmaceuticals, in the world of maybe some finance, certainly the world of IT security. There are some very good uses of AI because security has all of these log files. They have tons of big data, lots of data in one place. That would be a place where we'd really start to see something. And we are seeing some beginnings of automation into being able to correlate all that data. But it's not really AI, is it? It's really more just there's a lot of automation. There's not a lot of intelligence yet. We're very broadly calling AI anything that's automated, which isn't very accurate either. But you can't stop society from naming things badly. Otherwise, we'd be doing well with cybersecurity. There's another term that doesn't mean anything unless you finally sit down and go, well, what do you mean by that? So we've got another one of those. We're doing AI. What do you mean by that? And then we can talk about what you are doing and those types of things. I only use AI in one real thing with ProfessorMesser.com. To be fair, nothing in any of these documents, nothing in any video, nothing in any training materials you will ever see from me ever have anything that has been automatically generated, ever. Mostly because most of the time it's wrong. I could write it wrong myself. I don't need AI for that, but I go through and I build all of our content. I write all of these questions myself. I write all of the text myself. I do everything myself because I know that everything will be done correctly. All of the answers will be correct. All of the questions will make sense, and it will be accurate as to what CompTIA is expecting from you for this exam. Not that we didn't try. I thought, well, they're telling me great things about AI. Let's tell AI to build me some questions. And they were just bad. They were badly written. They were wrong. The problems with AI are many and varied. And so that's why. If anything, I think AI is going to be great for us. I think it's going to be fantastic for us as technology people. Here's why I think this is sort of a longer term view, but stay with me. So if you are noticing how AI is being used by others in our industry, or even not in our industry, people will open up a screen. They will go into some type of LLM or some other ChatGPT type of front end, and they will have it do all of the research for them. Whether the research is right or not important right now, but they're doing all the research is being done for them. How much smarter do you think the person doing the research is now by typing that into an LLM and getting a response from it? I would say they're losing IQ points. They are just ignoring all of the information they need to know and instead forcing that onto another system that's just providing them with output. And they are simply handing that output in to whoever wants it to be able to do that. We've seen this in news articles. The problem in the legal field right now is many and varied because LLMs are hallucinating legal issues that have never occurred and turning it into a submission to the courts. It's a mess. It's just a horrible mess. We're making people dumber with AI in many ways. And because of that, there's an opportunity. anytime somebody is not familiar with the way things work, they don't understand how that technology operates, they have no idea how to resolve a problem, they have no idea how to make these things fixed, that's a chance for us. And that's the great part about AI, I think, is that it's so bad at fixing problems that we are doing very, very well. It's making people less knowledgeable in how to do basic things. And we're seeing it sort of start with language. We're noticing people are becoming less able to write a sentence. They're being less capable in being able to interpret information. And that's a great opportunity for us because now we do know how to interpret that. We do know how to fix these problems. We do know how to focus on resolving problems and where we should go first. This is a great opportunity for us. And there are a few jobs in technology that are dealing with AI that are legitimate AI projects, especially those relating to big data. So maybe there will be a section of IT that really focuses on that side of things. So you may need to become much more knowledgeable in how to store and access large amounts of data, how to manage and maintain these large drive arrays, how to make the networks run faster so that we can correlate this information even faster, how to make all of this work together for that particular function. But is it replacing any jobs right now? When we saw a lot of people, a lot of companies restructure in an effort to implement AI, and now you know what they're doing? They're hiring those people back. We're starting to see it already. There are very large companies that have decided, okay, maybe that AI thing we're doing, we're going to kind of pare that down a little bit. Hey, still got those people on the speed dial? Can we get them back in here that actually know what's going on? Because we're going to need them to fix the mess that we made here. Maybe it's an opportunity for you. I think it might be. What will ultimately happen with AI? Who knows? Who knows what will ultimately become of this? There will certainly be some focus on it because companies have spent a lot of money. The industry has spent a lot of money. There are very large companies, both in the United States and around the world, that are focusing on these, that a lot of people invested a lot of money into. They needed to do something. I can't wait to see what that is. That will be something when they finally figure it out. But it certainly hasn't worked well for us. If you were worried that your tech support role was going to be replaced with AI, simply call into any AI tech support right now, and you will feel very good about your future. I assure you, you'll be doing just fine. So we're going to keep doing what we're doing. We're going to keep showing you how to do all of these things. We're going to show you how to make you smarter, not dumber. And the way to do that is to really understand these technologies at the bottom level and be able to build on them, get smarter with the technologies, get a stronger technical foundation, and then you won't have to worry about anything that happens with AI, cloud, or whatever the next big craziness that comes along. That's one of the great things about IT. We are resilient, if nothing else, and nobody's been able to replace us yet. Well, that brings us to the end of another study group. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you so much for being here for our first hour Q&A. Those are always fun to do. You guys did a great job with that one today. Of course, we have this after show. Thank you so much for that. And we got another one Friday. If you are into networking or you are studying for your Network Plus exam, or you know someone who is studying for Network Plus, we have our Friday study group, which we never do, but we're doing it this Friday. Come on back in a couple days and we'll do all the same thing, but with Network Plus content. I've already written these, so they're really good and they're really ready to go. I can't wait to show them to you with the performance-based questions, multiple choice questions, the after show questions, and much more. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.